So welcome everyone. It is great to have you with us. My name's Nina Boyson. To some of you, we already know each other, and some of you are meeting for the first time. Like I say, I'm so happy to have you here. And also so great to have Ian with me as my co-host. Thank you, Ian, for helping us run this with lots of energy and excitement. And it's great to kick the year off together with such an uplifting session. And well done for being here. If you're here, it means that you care about the health of your organization. So I'm particularly excited for what you're going to take away today. And I really believe that it will leave you feeling equipped and encouraged to tackle a year that might seem uncertain, but that you would at least walk away with encouragement for the next step to build strong for lasting impact. To those new to 54 and to these live learning sessions, a special welcome to you, and I hope to see you around more. Like I said, 54's mission is to create free learning experiences for ministries worldwide to guide you to grow healthy organizations. So this is an example of one of those resources, but we've also got a lot of content, courses on the platform, and you can go and explore and have a great time. There's so much to gain from. So really want to encourage you to go have a look and find something there that could be really equipping for your ministry. Just a few things to keep in mind as we go into the session. This meeting will be recorded, and please share it afterwards. I get a lot of emails of people asking, will it be recorded? Spread the word, it is being recorded, and you can also share it with others if you felt like it could be meaningful to another leader that you know. And please stay on mute to not disturb this session, but we do love to see you and to see your faces. So if network allows it, please keep on the camera. And there'll be time for questions at the end of the session. We always try to cut out a little bit of time for that. So if you have any questions as we go through the session, you can note them in the chat or write them down. If you note them in the chat, it's helpful to know that there are some questions that we can leave some time for. So that would be first prize, but whatever works for you, go for it. And then very exciting part that I am particularly excited to share with you is that today's conversation is not related to a specific dimension, but rather to the perspective intelligence of looking at your organization through the lens of the 9 dimensions of organizational health. So many of you might be familiar with the 9D assessment that gives you a clear picture of the health of your organization. And so the related content on the 54 platform of today's conversation is this assessment. One thing I will mention is we'll share a little bit more about it at the end, but we are so excited to say that we're going to be launching a new 54 platform in the first half of or towards the middle of February, and that would also contain a new 9D assessment. And what you can expect is a more intuitive and a more enjoyable process from signing up and sharing it with your team and taking the assessment to finally getting a thorough report. And that report is, I'm so excited about it. It looks incredible, and I'm really amped for what it's going to mean and unlock for all of you. So we'll remind you via email and LinkedIn and WhatsApp and whatever channel we're running with to make sure that no one misses out. And we want to encourage you to also spread the word and make sure that every ministry leader is touched by that. Great. We love starting these conversations with why it's important from a biblical perspective. And when Ian told me initially that there's scripture on the importance of organizational health, I must say I had my doubts. But if we look at Isaiah 54, it's amazing how the Lord encourages us and how these age-old words are still true for us today. And that He's saying that expansion is coming. He's seeing greater impact coming, and so we must be ready for it. So let's read Isaiah 54, verse 2 to 3. And it's also what our name's based on. Enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch your tent curtains wide. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your stakes, for you will spread out to the right and to the left. Your descendants will dispossess nations and settle in their desolate cities. That is the way a second language English speaking person reads the scripture.
Well read, Nina.
Thanks, Ian. Great.
Yeah,
So,
thanks. No, I was just going to add, Nina, just to reiterate, the name 54 of this platform comes from exactly from this verse. This is part of our DNA. And so it's such a
mm,
joy just to, as we start the year, to delve into this again and to do it with Neil. Excited
mm,
to do it with Neil. And I know you're going to intro Neil in a moment, but just uh, a little spoiler as we get going. I've walked with Neil and just have such huge respect for his leadership and his heart and his vision. And who better to speak on this than the one who was given this verse originally, who really brought this
mm,
verse to us as this is something significant when you think about leading your organization. And I think the thing, just as we were praying for this time together, what really started for me was that leading is tough. It has some tough moments, and just the sense that God sees, the Father knows, He understands,
mm,
and and he wants, there's such as the goodness of the heart of the Father that he wants to grow us and expand us and prepare us for the more that he has for us. And just trust for each of you on this session today that you will know this year that the heart of the Father is for more. And I love the words. We're going to come back to those words that we're putting up at the beginning, but the words really that were up, we already spoke to this too. So
mm,
and how we lead and how we grow our organizations is significant. And we're going to delve into that more today. So excited to go further as we journey through this short time together. Just to reiterate this, we say this every time, and I hope I'm a slow learner, and so the message is still sinking in for me, and I hope it's sinking in for you too. That when we're unhealthy, it draws our energy away from the mission that we have on our hearts. And as organizations, we see that time and time again when there's inner striving and struggling and we're not well organized and well run, we don't have the energy to focus outward. As opposed to an organization that has taken the time to be intentional about growing itself, that energy is really, really focused outwards. And our hearts for you are that you really walk in all that God has for you and impact for the kingdom of God across the face of the earth. And we know that the health of your organizations that you're in has a big bearing on that. So that's the message of today, and we're going to delve a bit into that in a moment. So before we do that though, if you haven't yet joined AHA Slides, go into that ahaslides.com/54. You can use your phone and just scan the QR code that's up on the screen, or go to ahaslides.com/54. And I think Renette put a link in the chat as well. And the first question up, just as people join, just get back in there, is what word or scripture are you carrying as you go into the year? What is in your heart? And some of the words that came up were slow and simple and summit, to abide, elevation, surrender, grace. First seek the kingdom. So good. And lots
mm,
of verses as well. Romans 15:13, Psalm 130. There's forgiveness with you that you may be feared. Keep going down there, Nina. Let's see what else is
mm.
down.
Sure.
Stretch, vision, weight versus weight. Very good. I like that little
Mm,
play of words there. Yeah. New things. Behold, all things will be new. And that's, I think, a reference to Revelation. Less of me, more of God. Amen to that. Wow.
sure.
May it just be less and less of us and more of God in all that we do this year. How would they hear without a preacher? Let's
Sure.
read the message. So good. Really good. Just give it a moment longer. This is so powerful.
Mm,
Very stirred by the different words that are coming up.
mm,
Hmm. One or two more, and then we'll move on, Nina.
mm,
Let's also we'll send these out to everybody. I think some of you might be looking at these and going, "Wow, those are really impacting." And we'll include these slides with a slide deck. And just see Susan's put in the chat, holiness, setting ourselves apart for
mm.
God. Really good.
Sure.
We could actually spend quite a lot of time here, but we've got a lot to get through. So let's go on to the next first question. So just think about your organization as you begin 2025. How would you rate the health of your organization? Are you like in not a great space? Are you struggling in different areas? We put up those 9 dimensions. Just have those in mind. where would you place yourself? Or are you feeling like your health is actually really strong? Are you
Mm.
healthy? You're thriving? You're ready to tackle the year? Let's see how this weighting comes out overall. Okay, so this is actually really good to see, Hanina. We could very
Mm.
mostly in the sort of top end from sort of 5 to 10, an average of 6.9, 6.8 around there. Most people saying, hey, we're doing well. Thanks, Susan. We see your 8. Well done. But just, that sense of, hey, we're actually doing okay, but wow,
Mm.
we've got room for growth, right?
Mm.
We've got room for growth. That's
And
so
that's the
good.
thing, there'll always be room for growth. So it's good
Mm,
to acknowledge that, but to at
mm.
least be in a state where um, we're not completely, our energy is not completely sucked into just keeping the organization alive.
Yes, so good. Let's go to the next question. As you think about the health of an organization and how it affects the impact it has, to what extent do you think the health of your or of any organization affects the impact it has? Do you think it's not at all from a scale of 1 to 10, or would you say it actually affects it extremely? So good. This is so good. We've got a good crowd here, Nina. I think we can put
It's,
them
it's,
here. They're ready. They
have you
know.
given them the answers, Ian?
I'm like, it's so good to see everyone going, it does, yes, because that's a message
Great.
from us at 54 consistently is that the
Mm,
health of your organization has a very direct link on the impact that you're having. And
mm.
I'm so pleased to hear you're on board with that. And in fact, Upit Kumar has put a 10 as well. So we see your 10. So good. All right, we're on the same page. Let's move to the last question before we hand over to Neil. Just think for a moment about where you're at. If you put in a 6, 7, 8, or whatever number you put in on that rating, this is for us and just for others on the call to think about what are the things that are holding you back from growing the health of your organization? What are some of the things that limit you? And
Mm.
um, yeah, as you think about that, is it different things that it could be from an awareness, a knowledge, yourself, your funding, your time. There's a lot of pressure on leaders. And so it's so
Mm.
good. Yeah, fear, lack of discipline,
Wow.
lack of time, capacity, lack of faith. Yeah, oh gosh, may you
Sure, this
encounter
is
God's faith
powerful.
again. Yeah. Living from urgent to urgent, too many stars, balls in the air with limited resources. I think those stars are meant to be balls in the air. So too much going on. We're running hard, and we just to take the time to grow the health of our organizations is difficult. Financial freedom, compliance issues. There's so much that holds us back, isn't there? And
Mm.
yet it's such a priority. Such a priority. And so I just want to say to you, well done for being here today and
Mm.
just realizing the importance of this and for taking the time to invest in yourself, to invest in your team. I saw a couple of people here in groups with their teams. Well done to you. That's so good. This rests with us as leaders. So good to get your input. I think that's the last one, is it, Nina?
That is. Thanks, Ian. Great. Thank you, everyone, for your responses. And I truly believe that one takeaway I hope for you after today is that you would feel less overwhelmed, and that what we're hoping for you is just the one next step, not the full journey, but the one next thing to do that just unlocks that good journey. I'm encouraged by this one that says today nothing made a journey in this area, and that is what it is. It's a journey. We don't have to solve everything tomorrow. We just need to find the right next step, and you're at the right place. So it's great to have you. And then it is wonderful to have Neil. Welcome, Neil, and thank you so much for being here, for being so generous with your time and your experience and your knowledge. And as we're going to be talking about unlocking health in organizations today, what excites me is that you've walked the walk. You've walked the walk of a ministry leader, of a funder, of so many different perspectives. So I really appreciate your insight in this incredibly important topic and what you've seen and what you've witnessed, and that you are a witness to how important this is and how big an impact it has on the impact organization has. So thank you so much for being here. Over to you.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be with you all. I love being around leaders. We all have so many things in common, and yet we often don't get a chance to really talk about them. And so it's just really lovely for us to have this conversation, and looking forward to diving further into it, Nina. So much to talk about.
There is so much to talk about, absolutely. And what we haven't told you yet, everyone, is that today we're going to take an approach where I'm going to be asking Neil a set of questions that he's going to respond to. Some of it he's aware of, some of it is not. So it's going to be an exciting exercise. But it just came from great conversations with Neil, where I realized he's got so much insight to share that could be really equipping because he's been in your shoes as you stand at the beginning of the year. And Neil, when we spoke about how you approach each new year through the lens of organizational health, you had some clear points that may be a good launch pad for this conversation. So, what does it look like for you to think about leading a team at the start of the year?
Mhm. You know, at the beginning of the year is such an important place for us because we often get to lay down just the energy levels, the foundation for the year, all those kinds of things. And so I really approach the beginning of each year with a lot of intentionality. And so, one of the things I try and do is close off the year before really well. Often we do our closing off of a January, maybe over the holidays. And I mean, I think that's great. I do that as well. But I actually, over the last couple of years, I've tried to close the previous year really well in December, so that I'm really kind of ready and fresh for the new year. And I try and think across the whole organization. What is needed for the organization to thrive this year? So I think about 25 or 24, and I think what is needed to thrive in the organization. So I'm really, trying to cultivate that perspective. And the two engines in every organization. There's a people engine and there's a functional engine. And these two engines are so, so important. The people engine for me refers to leadership, vision, and clarity. It refers to missional alignment and unity. It refers to culture and health. Those kinds of aspects. The functional engine are the components that enable the people engine to thrive and to remove friction out of that system. It's your IT systems and it's your funding, it's your operational channels, and it's your administrative processes. So those are the kinds of things I want to think through. And before we developed the 9 dimensions, I really hadn't defined those things, but I would try and just broaden my perspective as much as possible. And I think the 9 dimensions helps me to do this really, really well each year. To kind of it's a bit of a cheat sheet. And that, as a leader, people always have to be our priorities, not the systems. But we have to keep these two things in mind as much as possible. So from a people perspective, I want my team to be in as healthy place as possible, as aligned as possible, as clear on strategy as possible, and of course as happy as possible. It's really, really important to me. Many years ago, and I think some of you might have heard me say this, but I used to lead an advertising agency for 17 years. And we used to just go for it. Advertising there's so many deadlines every single day of the year. I used to just drive it hard, and people would kind of get burnt out in that. And one day I felt like the Lord gave me such a clear word, and He said, "Neil, you are the pastor of the people who work for you." And that word really changed my perspective of leadership because, the mission was important, the processes were important, the people were important, but probably a little bit less. And, over the last probably 10, 15 years, I've really tried to prioritize the importance of the well-being and the joy of the people in the team. So doing it comes after being. And if the being of the team, the health of the heart and soul of the team is good, then the doing I know is going to take care of itself. And so, it's really important. But at the end of the day, you can have you can have happy people who don't accomplish much. And, I think sometimes one of the negatives that we sometimes hear in the ministry is, boy, I'm really have a happy team, but there's a lot of kumbaya and, just, just enjoying my own space and my own freedom and my own time. And actually there's a real mission for us to achieve. So how do we help people to really get going? And so, Nina, I think this comes to your question really is, at the beginning of the year, strategy is my go-to place. I want to align the team around strategy. And there are many reasons for that, because strategy brings clarity, strategy brings alignment. And we generally will go away for 2 or 3 days. We'll just pick a place. It doesn't have to be fancy, but I want the whole team to come away somewhere in January and spend 2 or 3 days together. And I want that to be a relational time. So it's the outcome is good strategy, but the sort of emphasis is relationship in the process of getting to strategy. And that strategy comes off the back of evaluating the year before really, really well. So, this is just a team rhythm that we do. We close off our year well, and we actually do our impact evaluation in late November. We've got processes that help us throughout the year so that at the end of the year, we pull a report together. We look at the year, we sit and we ask great questions, hard questions. We look at each other and we say, did we do what we said we were going to do? And that's really important. So by the time January comes, I can really focus with our team on strategy, because we actually have evaluated really, really well in November, and the two are so close together. November ends, the year's done, and then suddenly you're in January, and you can kick off with strategy. So that's what I try and do, Nina, is cultivate perspective. What does the organization need to thrive? I think about the people engine. I think about the functional engine, and really just focus everybody towards uniting around our strategy for the year.
So good. Thank you, Neil. That sounds really practical. And what I'm hearing is the way that you end also helps you start well. So let's try and get that right for the end of this year to whoever's not in that rhythm yet. But what I love about what you're saying is the strategy focus to help you see, okay, how am I going to make an impact and make it work this year? What are those set of decisions that I'm making at the beginning of the year that's going to be the guardrails? But together with that the people element is so important, and how you've described this event that you set aside and prioritize to be for strategy, but also for the relational time. And would you say that in running an organization and doing these things, it's never just the one or the other, but there's always an interrelatedness between the dimensions and the things that we do? Because where this question is coming from is it feels quite overwhelming to decide, what do I focus on? So could you tell me a little bit more about the interrelatedness of it in a way that's not overwhelming? This is something that you're really good at. So I'm backing you with this.
Yeah, there's a lot of interconnectedness between these different components. So, I mean, just as I spoke about the two engines, those two are interconnected, right? So if you haven't prioritized or paid attention to your systems, your admin, your operations, those kinds of things, you'll find that your people will be discouraged. And so there's a direct correlation between how much emphasis you put on really good systems, efficient systems that reduce friction, that then enables people. I think that's what Ian was in a sense saying with that slide that he presented early on. So I'm not, I come out of a creative background, so I don't love systems at all. But the one thing I love the most about systems, if I had to love anything, would be that they enable human thriving. Systems enable human thriving. And if you don't have good systems in place and you're not a good systems person, find someone who is. It's something that I've had to do over the years, is I've always had to have a good systems person next to me. So I always want a good operations manager. It helps me to be a better leader. And so that's really important. So then what we could say is there's a correlation between culture and systems. If you want healthy culture, have efficient systems. It's not to say that's the only thing that enables healthy culture, because leadership enables healthy culture. there's a correlation between how you lead and the thriving of your culture. And many of you will know the saying, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." I think it's entirely true. Um, if you have a healthy culture and people are thriving, then they will enable the mission to be achieved no matter what's in the way. So people who really are empowered and well led and feel bought into the mission, who understand the vision clearly, they're going to run. And then you could just get behind them, as a leadership team, and just make sure you enable that. So leadership, culture, clear connection. I already mentioned the strategy and impact evaluation connection. Now, I want to emphasize this one because I woke up to this one late in life, and probably for many years, I focused on strategy without focusing on impact evaluation. I'll never do that again because it's such a powerful connection. And if you're not doing this in your organization, I want to encourage you to do it. Build in a process, and you can start real simple in this. And we've got some good courses on 54 to help you to do this, but build in a simple way to collect data that aligns to your strategy. So let's say your strategy is, build 100 buildings or plant 1,000 churches. There are things to do on the way to doing that that'll tell you that we did besides just the number, because you can build 100, plant 1,000 churches and destroy people relationships in the process, or being so goal orientated that people don't feel loved. There's a whole lot of things. So build in the important data that enables you not just to achieve your strategy, but to achieve it in a godly way. And then at the end of the year, sit down as a team and ask each other, how did we do on all of those? So as an example, one of the things that we want to do is we want to have a good strategy. And so the data for us is, and there are a few points on this, but one of the points is, are we praying and asking God for clear strategy? So at the end of the year, we look back on our prayer life as a team and we say, how well did we pray? And it's not it's not a sort of a rules-based thing. We're saying, did we abide? Did we spend time with the Lord? Did we seek the face of the Lord for what He wants us to do as a team? Because that's strategy. And so, I remember years where we actually said, we rate ourselves real low, or really low on prayer. And I saw how it played out in what we did. Then other years where we prayed like crazy, we threw ourselves at it, and how we flourished. So there's a real clear connection between those two things, between strategy and your impact evaluation. And I think probably the other one that comes to mind that I haven't spoken about is the connection between your story, your brand, the way you communicate who you are, and your fundraising effectiveness. So, you'll have fundraising as a key component of your strategy for the year, I assume, unless you've got a lot of income generating projects. We've found that organizations that aren't able to tell their story well have limited success with fundraising. And so often people come to us and say, can you train us on fundraising? And what we do is we train them on storytelling. Now, it seems obvious if you think about it that way, because if I come to you and you say to me, what do you guys do? Or what do you do? Or what's your purpose? What's your calling? What's your mission? And I bumble around and I'm not able to articulate it, or it takes me 30 minutes to say something that I should say in 1 minute. I lose interest. I think this person's really needs some clarity, and the ability to tell a clear story really well connects you to your ability to raise funds. So, Nina, I think those are some of the things that come to mind.
So good. So what I think you're not saying is that one needs to do all of those things all at once and together, because it goes together, but more as you strengthen the one part, naturally other parts of your organization would also get stronger and would take less effort to strengthen because you've been working on the specific part. And that's really exciting to hear. It's almost like there's a domino or a knock-on effect on just the next step, at least, that you take. And that's the good news, is just to get started.
And not have to
and as you
not have to be an expert in any of these things, So if you're not good at storytelling, find someone who is. Not good at fundraising, fine. I think we're in a great place in the ministry world, in that we can collaborate and we can really ask for help. And
Mm.
just on this call, there are 83 people on this call. You could probably solve every single problem that you have in your organization through one of these 83 people that's sitting on this call, because
Mm.
we should be generous with our support and encouragement of one another.
Mm. Yeah, I meant to that. So Neil, something that you said at the beginning of this answer really struck me is how if you've got a team that believes in the mission and that's enthusiastic, you've got the right people on board, that they will run. So if you are a leader of an organization where you've got the system challenges, but you also sense God stirring you to develop your people and invest in your people, um, well, if it's God stirring you, you should certainly do that. But would you say that starting with the people is a good place to start? And I'm thinking of the order of the dimensions in the wheel. We start with leadership and then mission, being clear on your mission, strengthening your team, and so follows brand and communication in the second part that's before funding. It's actually so beautiful how your example now just emphasized that strengthening your communication and your brand would then strengthen some of the dimensions a little bit later on funding. So back to my question on team, would you start there if this is your scenario? You've got a lot to work on the systems, but you're also thinking maybe I should start with team. Is that,
Yeah. Yeah,
would you resonate
it
with that?
always starts with people. So, there's no organization that begins without a leader who carries a vision from God. I mean, that's how God always begins things. He gives a leader a burden, a vision, a passion for something. And if that leader can communicate that well, which is, the art of vision casting that leaders carry, people will come alongside of them
Mm.
and say, I also want to be part of that. And if they're part of that, then you'll have people on a mission. And if you have people on a mission that are well loved and cared for, you have healthy culture. And if you have healthy culture, then all the other parts then start to roll. Now, one thing I'll just caveat that to say there are many organizations that have a founder that burns with a mission, and the mission is really clear and they're able to pull people on. But often founders are so consumed with the mission that they're not really good with the functional engine that I spoke about earlier
Mm.
on. And so as people run and run hard towards the mission, sometimes you can have chaos in the background. You can have chaotic systems, you can have bad financial management, you can have all those kinds of things. And so, and it's not typical to founders, but well, maybe it is more typical to founders because often a second or third tier leader is brought in to stabilize things.
Mm.
And good systems bring stability. The danger, of course, with a leader who focuses on stabilizing things is that the mission starts to wane a little bit and burn a little bit less brightly. And so, my mentor, one of the leaders I took over from, he said to me, "You always want to lead apostolically." And I remember that because apostolically is it says, what is the mission that God's given me, and how do I enable people to run
Mm.
towards it, as opposed to leading
Mm.
operationally. Operationally is not a good way to lead. The operations, the administrations, the systems should enable. And an organization tips into bureaucracy when there's so much focus on what needs to happen, all the checks and balances, all the governance and everything is very, very important, but it must always enable people to run towards the mission. So
Mm.
yes, the people piece is the most important piece, and leaders need to know how to envision people and how to raise up leaders around them.
Mm. So good. Thanks, Neil. So we have a strong team. We've got a team that's focused on the mission, willing to run. How do you involve your leadership and your team and get them on board to strengthen or partner with you as the one responsible for it to strengthen the health of your organization?
So I would think about three three parts of the leadership. I would think about the leader and the management team being healthy. I think about the people in the culture where you're going to raise leaders out of, and I think about your board um, and your advisors and your elders around those. So I've spoken about the sort of leader's role. But out of the culture, out of that environment of people, the team, leaders need to be able to identify and raise up the leaders who will run with them, but also the next generation of leaders. This is very, very important, and it just happens so seldom. Somehow we're really terrible at raising up leaders and giving them responsibility. Sometimes we give them responsibility because we don't want it, and that often kind of burns them out. But when we genuinely want to get behind them and we see the potential that God's put in people, we need to call that out. And research shows that the way that most leaders are grown most effectively is through challenging assignments with a mentor. So, and we should never be scared to give our potential up and coming leaders a challenging assignment. And that could be create a project for them. And sometimes I'll make up something. It's not off strategy, but it's maybe not something that we were going to do. And I'll do that because it's important for me to give an up and coming leader a task that'll challenge them, that'll just stretch them out of it. And then I want to remain close enough to them to be able to mentor them. And mentoring for me is not hard. It's just, sit down every now and again saying, hey, what are you struggling with? What are you loving about this? What do you need help on? It's just asking some questions to process it a little bit. So I think out of the culture, out of the team, you want to be pulling out at least 2 to 5 people that you see potential in each year that you're going to develop a little bit further. And then, I just want to go to the board quickly, because board can be such a disabling or an enabling environment for a nonprofit, for a ministry. We need boards because boards help us to be held accountable and to steward what we're stewarding really well. Again, if I go to founder boards are generally put in place by the founder, and they'll often be slightly less powerful or disempowered because the founder is really strong, and they could be yes men to the founder, or they could just be friends who love the founder and just support them really well. Sometimes that's it's good for encouragement, but not always good for accountability. If you get to a second or third leader who's taken over from a founder, sometimes the board rises up and starts to dominate the mission or the ministry, and can bring bureaucracy, but can also disempower a leader and hold a leader back from creativity and vision. A board should never do that. A board should always blow a wind into the sails of a leader, and really be able to be there to guard, to guide the typical eldership things, guide and govern, and make sure that they're really helping a leader to do well. So I think the people dynamics are so important. Leaders never should lead on their own. They lead with a management team. They lead by raising up leaders around them to support them, and lead by being in good submission to a board that should be empowering them.
Wow, I have many questions, but I will try filter. It's helpful to categorize. So let's start with your leadership team. Could you think of a time where you as a leader were not as healthy, and how that impacted the health of your organization?
I've always been healthy. Just kidding.
Beautiful.
I gave you one example earlier on, where I was, Daniel Goleman's got these 6 styles of leadership. One of them is the pace setter leader. I was the pace setter leader. It came out of an unhealthy pattern in my growing up, where I became a bit of a perfectionist to control my environment a little bit more, which resulted in me in my leadership style becoming more of a pace setter, because I wanted to dictate the pace and the quality and everything. It's it's necessary sometimes. Sometimes leaders need to step in, work hard, get everyone moving, but on an ongoing basis, it doesn't create a healthy environment. So, I guess visions always come fairly easy for me. I'm a creative person, and so I see things quite easily, and I can normally articulate those things. And so the visionary style of leadership is a very, very helpful, empowering style of leadership. And I know some of you on this call well enough to know that I know you carry real clear vision and articulate it well. Some leaders struggle with vision. Some some leaders actually don't know how to articulate it or struggle with that. And I'd just say, it's really worthwhile doing vision in a team and say, hey, what are we wanting to achieve? What's a good metaphor or picture or story that we'll tell about this to get it and inspire people well? So that, I have, I've been unhealthy at different seasons in the kind of leadership style that I've had, only at, different points to sort of become more aware of these things and then to help and must, to go to the Lord, kind of grow in those and get advice from mentors myself. Spiritual unhealth is probably the biggest concern because, we're
Mm,
not all going to be perfect leaders in our leadership style.
mm,
It's not always that toxic. But when we are unhealthy spiritually, because these are spiritual, our task is spiritual leadership primarily. If you're going after anything in the kingdom, if it's a mission of God, it's first spiritual. And
mm,
there's an expectation on leaders of ministries to always be spiritually healthy. And I just want to say in front of all of you guys, that is not the case. Spiritual leaders are not always spiritually healthy. You and I both know that. So let's just agree to that. And the challenge is the more the longer you lead, the harder it is for you to be vulnerable about your spiritual health.
mm,
And so that's why, if you've got a good board and they really are like elders, let them ask you questions about your spiritual health. I want to give, and I've done this many times, is give leaders the freedom, the permission to say, Neil, how is your spiritual health doing? Not did you have a quiet time this morning, or
mm.
did you go to church? What is the quality of your spiritual health, your relationship with God
Sure,
like? Because if that's
sure.
healthy, the organization is generally going to be in a much more healthy state.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, that is such a good starting point. I was going to ask what do you mean with involving the board? What does that practically look like? But that's a really good starting point. One example of how you can involve your board to help strengthen the health of your organization is to ask, what does your spiritual health look like? Are
Yeah.
there any other examples you can share of how to involve your board? And the next question I would like to ask, if you want to incorporate it, practically, what does it look like to involve and equip your team? So, few practical examples on the board, few practical examples on involving your team.
Yeah. I'm a believer in a senior leader or CEO to um, give the board. Now this is going to sound arrogant. It's not meant to give the board instructions as to what you want from them. Often
Yeah.
leaders, because a CEO is submitted to the board and submitted under the board, often feel very hard to tell the board what to do. Now we're not generally telling the board what to do, but in terms of the things that enable you as a leader to thrive, I would make that very clear to the board. I need the following
Mhm.
from you to do this job really well, right? Maybe they hired you, or maybe they've come in to help you to do well, but they don't always know what you need to do what you're doing well. And so, I feel very comfortable sitting with the board and saying, guys, these are some of the things that are really important to me to
Mm,
thrive and to do well. And if you can help me to create an enabling environment so that
mm,
I'm healthy. I know that I can lead this organization to where it needs to be. Um, so, I think it's important to be real transparent and honest and vulnerable with the board if you can do that. If you can't, it's important to discuss with the board how to get the relationship between your role and the board's role more healthy, and that can open up quite a good conversation.
right.
Um, in terms of the team, Nina, we pray a lot together. We laugh a lot together, and we personal together. So we do the stuff that most people think, and Mergon's largely a business type environment. When you walk in, it feels like a business type environment, but actually, because there's no sacred secular divide, we are this, we want to be the same here that we would be in church with our families, whatever it would be. So we create a lot of opportunity for us to be really personal with one another. We create a lot of opportunities to pray for one another, um, just to be goofy and laugh at each other, and I think that's part of healthy culture. So if the team is spiritually healthy, I believe that the culture will be a healthy culture as well.
Mm. I hear you referring to spiritual health a lot, Neil, where there's so many other things to focus on. So I don't really have a question, but can you go deeper into that? How must a leader decide what is the right next step when there's so much to do? How long has one prioritized spiritual health enough? Is there a place where you say, okay, this is good enough, we're good to carry on with other things? How do you bring it into all the other things that need to be done?
It's a great question. I think there's obviously a balance in it. You can be overly spiritual where everything, is leaning into that space. The reality is everything spiritual has to play out in the physical. And so, if spiritual health should play out in culture, like I said, and so there's a balance. We want to be praying enough, but if we spent all our time praying, we just wouldn't do anything. And so, how much is enough? I think that's something that you can discuss as a team. Like I said earlier on, we do agree that praying is important. What we're not sure on is how much praying is important. And so we discussed it. Like, should we be praying before every single meeting? No, we don't. But should we be praying before every important meeting? Yes, we should. Should it be natural for us to be able to stop any meeting at any time and just stop and pray? Yes, it should be. Should it be an issue if visitors had to walk in and one team sitting in an office, open plan office praying? No, that should not be a problem at all. So, what are the natural norms and bounds that enable you to cultivate healthy spirituality in the environment? But at the same time, let's work really hard. Let's work hard because the mission's important, and let's go after the things that God's given us, and that's the role of leadership, vision, mission, all those kinds of things.
So good. Thank you. And there's no one-way cheat sheet. It felt really encouraging when you said, let's have a conversation about it. It's good to be here and to know and acknowledge its importance. Spiritual health is extremely important. What it looked like is going to differ per organization. If you're in an extremely uncertain time, more time in prayer, always a lot of time in prayer, but especially then. And if things are pretty clear, you've heard from God on a strategy, rhythms might look different, and perhaps our caution is not to get stuck in one way of doing, but to really keep the conversation open and involve our team in talking about organizational health. How are they participating in it? Are we all taking responsibility for our spiritual health?
Yeah.
Great.
One unique time, 2019, we were together on a 3-day strategy time with our team. And typically what we do is we begin spending a lot of time in prayer, and sometimes just silent prayer. God, what are you saying to us? And capturing pictures. The overwhelming scripture and picture that came out was the boy holding 2 fish and 5 loaves before Jesus. And we felt like God said to us, I'm going to do a lot with your little. So we wrote it down. COVID happened very soon after that. And suddenly we had to do a lot with our little. And we were so at peace as a team. Our budgets fluctuate. I think I wrote a letter to most of our ministry partners saying, guys, we just try and do the best we got. But we had such peace knowing that God was in it and He'd prepared us for it. And so, we were being prayerful, we were being strategic, and we were able to run well as those two things came together.
So good. I've been reminded as you shared, as I reflected on all of last year's sessions, every single one, whether it is about strategy, governance, communication and identity, funding, all of them had a very practical next step or recommendation, which was always prayer. And the encouragement I take away is that what you're sharing today, the spiritual health and prayer, it's not something else you do together with making all of the decisions or the next step on your organizational health. It is fundamentally part of the next step in strengthening the health of your organization. It's not an add-on and a tick box exercise. The wonderful thing we see is as we spend time in prayer, through spirit of discernment, we get clarity and we get encouragement from the Spirit to know how to strengthen our governance or how to what our strategy needs to be. So that's very encouraging. Thank you, Neil. I do
Welcome.
have one more question for you, but I saw some in the chat, so I'll hold mine and just jump to Prabhakar Norman, who's asking, when is it the right time for leadership transition in an organization? So he's asking the right person, and encouraging to know we've got great courses on it, but if you can give us a short version of what is the right time, please.
So hard to say what the right time is, Prabhakar. It's I think it has to be discerned with how God is moving you. If it is you or somebody, how God is moving you in the season of life that you're in. If you feel like you have a lot of energy and clear vision for the mission, then you shouldn't be moving. You should be leading. But on the other hand, it's always the right time to be preparing people towards transition. So I don't aim to go anywhere at Mergon. God hasn't said to me to go anywhere. But for 3 or 4 years, I've been preparing for my transition in such a way that, I speak about openly. Don't want to confuse anyone, but I make it clear, guys, I'm not going to be leading this organization for a long time. And I want to make sure that there are leaders that are coming up. So the way we know is to discern ourselves and the Holy Spirit. What is God saying to me in this season? And then to have some wise elders around us to be able to bounce that off. And some people say, no, you're in the right place. You have energy. We see you have vision, and we just want to affirm, keep running. And some people say, I think it's time for you to start praying about it. So we discern that together, but we're always raising people and preparing for a transition. That should not be a question. In my mind, if you've only been leading for 1 year or 10 years, we should always be preparing towards a transition, because transitions are the things that create the biggest brokenness and erosion of value in organizations when they're done badly. And so the bar is too high for us to fail on that one. That's why I would say it's not an option always to be preparing well.
It's really good. And I'm excited to encourage everyone who's considering this, that Malcolm Webb is going to be talking about leadership transitions as a culture. So there's a lot we can learn from, like you said, Neil, from day one, thinking about it and not being caught off guard, but always being a good steward of the role that God's placed you in. We've got Mario saying perhaps there are new leaders here. So how would healthy leadership development look like in day one, week one, first month, and first year? What should we be prioritizing even from day one and week one? I feel like some of it you've touched on, but if there's anything you want to emphasize, go for it.
Probably too much in the question to do justice to it, because I think there'd be detail in that maybe we wouldn't have time for. But just to say, I think your thinking is right. What should I be doing short term, and what should I be doing mid and long term with leaders? So you're not necessarily going to come out the blocks on day one and say, here's 5 challenging assignments. But as you are working with people, you're gonna find the right challenging assignments for them. So for me, that would be sort of midterm. Short term, I think just having the conversation about raising leaders. We lead a life group. My wife and I lead a life group. The first thing I said to our life group, it's a young life group, I said, everybody sitting here is going to lead this life group throughout this year. And we probably lead it 1 out of every 4 weeks. And we've just got leaders popping up all the time. We could start 2 other life groups just with the leaders that have come out. And so, that's a day one thing, is set the expectation that everybody's got the leadership potential inside of them, and you are going to be seeking it out and calling it out. Next, set those assignments when they're good and mentor them through until such time as they're either leading in your organization at some significant place or leading in another organization. It's really hard to release good leaders out of your organization if you've invested into them. But if you're kingdom minded, you will sow your leaders out if you're kingdom minded. If you're not kingdom minded, you'll hold on to them. I encourage you to release leaders into the place that God's called them to be released into.
Great. Thank you, Neil. I'm going to start wrapping up with the questions, and I see everyone's asking. You mentioned good health evaluation for your team and indicators such as how much are we praying? Is there an available suggested suggested questions or indicators on the 54 platform that we could use as a base to start from to customize for our organization? I assume you're doing these evaluations quarterly. We are having to wrap up, so I'll do a quick response, and Neil, if you want to add to that, please do. But so we've got in order to do a health evaluation, we've got the 90 assessment, and in order to derive indicators of impact, we've got the impact evaluation courses, which has been exceptionally helpful. We've done it ourselves. I've done those courses, and it's really helped us to develop indicators that helped us ask the right questions. But Neil, do you want to add anything to that? And then I'll jump to my last question to you.
Just to say, we did those with Dr. Steve Patty. He's a specialist in creating impact evaluation for ministries and organizations. So I would recommend them. They're really good.
Thanks, Neil. Last question. How or what advice would you give as a next step to leaders as they approach the year?
I think I'm done. I thought I just did that.
Thanks for your time. No, I'm kidding.
Next step. We have a phrase that we use in 54 called perspective intelligence. The more we understand what all the different sort of dimensions and health factors are for an organization, the smarter we become as leaders, which is perspective intelligence. So I would say cultivate your perspective intelligence of what it looks like for a healthy organization. That's the key to unlocking. The title of this is unlocking the health of organizations, and I would say the key to unlocking it is for leaders to cultivate their perspective intelligence of the organization, both in the people engine and in that functional engine.
Great. Practically, would that be, where do they go on the 54 platform to do that?
You want me to be that practical? Nina, why don't you answer that question?
I would really recommend, honestly, for perspective intelligence, the report is going to be so helpful. So to do the 90 assessment, you don't do the heavy lifting has been done in that regard. You don't have to sit long and try and find it in yourself, but to do it as a team and to get that report. And but I think where the perspective intelligence is going to come in, especially, is the conversations that's going to unlock when you see the report and can have those conversations with your team.
Yeah. And by the way, we're not trying to sell anything, so just do it. If you want to do
It's
it,
for free.
It should be a blessing to you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Neil. Going to take us through the last bit. You should be seeing my share your thoughts screen. We really value your feedback, so we would love to hear from you how you found the session, whether it has been equipping and relevant to you. And please do scroll to make sure that you answer all of the questions. We'll keep that up for a bit. I just want to tell you the next stuff that's coming up that we're really excited about is next month. We have Dave Patty talking about leadership in motion, specifically organizational life stages. So there's a lot of next steps that you can do in your organization, but the life stage that you're in is really important to take into consideration. So don't miss it. It's going to be really good and really equipping. We see you there. I'm excited. And after that, we've got cultivating leaders and building a culture of succession. And I've seen a lot of questions that relate to that. So do also make sure you note that down. We want to see you there. And as we've mentioned, the 90 assessment that's going to be so much better will be launched in the middle of February. So if you want to do it now, great. If you want to hold off a little bit and wait for the better version, that's even better. So make sure that you don't miss it by scanning this QR code, and you'll be on a WhatsApp group where we will let you know when the new platform is launched, and you can be some of the first people to enjoy and to give us feedback and to really have a great time. Thank you, everyone. It is so good to have you here. We'll capture some of the questions that's been asked and try circle back to that on the WhatsApp group. So do jump onto the group if you want to continue this conversation, and we'll see you there and at our next session. Thanks, everyone.